Well, hello, I'm Bishop Donald Crooms. Just wanted to kind of chime in today and share some things that I've been thinking about and something that I think might be important to you. Today I want to talk about decisions that sometimes it's easy to be so indecisive, not to make a decision, especially on hard things and things that will change the course of life for other people, or if you're in authority, certain decisions you make will impact others. And I want to say this: always the decision you make for your life will always impact some things that will happen to you personally. But sometimes we wonder about how is it that the Lord permits loss and hurt and disappointment and well, whenever He does, it's usually because something better is on the way. I've thought about it sometimes. In the midst of all of that, it's hard, and you just you're right at that moment. Your mind is saying, "Why would God allow this? Why couldn't He have stopped this?" Or for me, I'd say, "Why wouldn't He have shown me so I could have prepared myself?" But I've come to find out through experience with Him that when something happens, or when especially with loss, there's always something better that's on the way. Um, it's difficult to understand it, understand God's ways and how He does certain things. But I just want you to know, always remember, whatever He's doing, it's going to bring glory to Him, and it's going to somehow work in your favor. In 2018, here in the eastern coast of North Carolina, my parents uh, lost their home to a devastating hurricane that hit our area. It destroyed a lot of businesses and buildings, and it destroyed their home. The house was built in 1966. It was where I grew up. It was where my sister grew up, and where our children, my sons and my nephews, had memorable times and great fun. And it's where they laughed. The kids did laugh. It's where they got in trouble. It's where me and my sister got in trouble. It's where we have a little fights and all of that. Sisters and brothers do. But it's also been the times where we've come together and we've shared our joys, our sorrows, our ups and our downs. We've experienced loss of family. And so for the hurricane to destroy this house was almost wiping out some of our memories for 52 years, wiping it away, some of our good times. And it kind of came to the point of decision. So where would my parents, my aging parents, go to from this point on? Having lived in the same place since the mid 60s, and now here we are, 2018, and they got to get up and move or rebuild. So, that first decision was what they were familiar with, this family living in that little neighborhood, and my grandmother next door. So they immediately thought, why don't we just rebuild? Well, when the adjusters came out and they saw everything, they said that the house was irreparable. It couldn't be repaired. So then the next decision was, so what do we do? They hadn't built the house in 50 years. And so my mother said, let's go to fast track. Let's look for a modular. So we went and looked at a modular and she found one she liked. And me and my sister, my father told us we could choose what it was. And so we chose something we liked. And only to find out that it wasn't going to be fast after all. It was going to be 18 months. 18 months to construct it, 18 months to get it all set up, which was not going to give them an immediate answer for what they thought would be fast track. So then it was another decision. So do you build a house or do you wait? And so they waited for a while because I actually think they didn't want to relocate. They just waited. And that's sometimes with us. We don't like change. And sometimes change is what's going to add to us. But because it's an unfamiliar place, we don't like change. Remember the children of Israel? They didn't like change. They didn't like when they had to leave from eating the leeks and all those things in Egypt to having to get manna from on high. And after a while, they didn't like manna. They complained to God, well, we want some meat. So then quails fell. So then they had manna and quails. And so in all of that, sometimes God causes change to give us better. So the next step for my parents in making the next decision was, do we wait? And finally, some things occurred, and so they said, well, we'll just go rent a place. And that day, my mother, my aunt were out looking for a place to rent, and I stumbled upon this house, or one of us stumbled upon this house, I should say, and had a for sale sign out. And so at my parents' age, they weren't really thinking about buying a new house. And so through much talking, um, especially to my mother, through much talking, she decided, well, let me just look. I said, just look at it, look at it. Let's just go in and just look at it and see what it looks like. And we immediately fell in love with it. And she was still kind of pulling back on it. But after a couple of days, she decided, let's check into it. So then the next decision to make was, how do we find financing? So we called a realtor. The realtor said, I know a lady who can finance you. And my dad, being a veteran, gave him some extra benefits. He had never used, having served in the United States military, he had never used any of those benefits. And so we checked into that. And lo and behold, after a couple of months, they closed on this house. We're able to move into it. And I'm sitting on the porch right now, rocking and listening to nature and looking around the neighborhood and visualizing the change that God wanted to give them. But they had to make a decision. If you're going to experience better in God, you have to make a decision. Sometimes that decision will change the scope of everything you know and everything you know. But it's okay. It's okay. God wants to change your future. He wants to give you better. Better is out there waiting on you. Better is your destination. Matter of fact, some of you, better is getting ready to ring your doorbell. Don't you dare pretend you're not at home. Answer the door. Answer the door to better. I'm urging somebody today that where you are, you're not stuck. Better is coming. Better is coming. Matter of fact, for you, for my parents, this new home was larger. It was more spacious. It was in need of little repairs. The old home needed a lot of repairs. This was in need of little repairs. And so what ended up happening, they're even closer, it's more convenient. They're closer to stores and closer to the pharmacy, closer to the post office, closer to government agencies. It's like God put them right in the smack middle of something else that made it more convenient for them. Before they lived 6-7 miles out of town. Now they're right in the city limits. So when God wants to shift you, make the decision that you want what God wants. So rather than avoiding the decision, make a decision. I'm sure whatever decision you make will be the plans of God for your life. And guess what? He's planned to give you hope and a future. And this time, it's going to be better around. Bless you. Have a good day. Start making decisions.